There is a stretch of road in Northern California that seems to exist outside of time. Highway 36 snakes along the boundary where Shasta and Tehama counties meet, a thin ribbon of pavement pressed between walls of ancient timber and untamed brush. Locals in the region have a name for the area surrounding Bigham Gorge. They call it the Dead Zone, not as poetry, but as fact. No cell signal, no neighbors, nothing but miles of raw wilderness separating you from the nearest sign of human life. Before we get into today's case, hit like and subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories. Don't forget the notification bell and share where you're watching from below. Your support helps keep these stories in the spotlight. Let's start. On May 25, 2024, something shattered the perpetual stillness of that corridor. A routine patrol found a vehicle that had no business being there. A light tan Chevrolet Avalanche sat at the road's edge in a way that immediately unsettled the officers who spotted it. This wasn't a car that had stalled out or careened off the road. It had been positioned deliberately, tucked toward the overgrowth, as though someone had attempted to conceal it at the last possible second before losing nerve and abandoning the plan entirely. The truck was just sitting there in the middle of nowhere, waiting. As the officers moved closer in the warm May air, they were met by something that stopped them cold. Rising from the sealed cargo bed was an odor that required no interpretation. It is one of the most primal alarm signals known to anyone who works in forensics or law enforcement, the unmistakable biological signature of death in progress. The veterans among them recognized it instantly. They braced for what they were about to find. But when they pulled back the cover of the truck bed, there was nobody there. What lay at the bottom, crumpled and soaked, was a white sheet. The fabric was saturated from end to end in dark reddish-brown stains that had already begun to set into the fibers. The volume of blood was not consistent with a minor injury. It told a story of catastrophic, likely unsurvivable loss. A license plate check took seconds. The truck was registered to Nikki Cheng Saelee-McCain, a resident of Redding who had been listed as a missing person for the past 3 days, though those close to her hadn't actually spoken with her in a full week. The moment that abandoned pickup materialized 30 miles outside her front door, this investigation transformed entirely. What began as a search for a missing woman became something far darker. This was a crime scene. The truck was here. The blood was here. The sheet was here. Nikki was not. To understand how this chain of events unfolded, you have to go back to where it all began. To the night the last messages were sent, the last sighting confirmed, and the last time anyone saw Nikki Cheng Saelee-McCain alive. 7 days before that truck was found, Nikki's Saturday evening was consumed not by rest, but by crisis. A family emergency had drawn her and several relatives to Mercy Hospital in Redding, where her brother-in-law Brian had been rushed into intensive care. The situation required a rotating presence, family members cycling in and out over the course of the night. As the hours crept past midnight, logistics became complicated. Vehicles were scarce, people were scattered, and Nikki had a task to take care of. At 12:35 in the morning on May 18th, she sent a text to her sister-in-law, Chloe. The message was brief and practical. She told Chloe she was about to drive her mother-in-law, Jeanette's pickup, from the hospital back to Jeanette's house, returning the truck to its owner so the night could finally come to an end. That text was the last direct communication Nikki would have with anyone she loved. From that point forward, investigators had to reconstruct every minute using secondary sources, the accounts of witnesses, and the digital trail. Left by cell tower data, the picture they assembled showed Nikki completing exactly what she had said she would do. She delivered Jeanette's truck to Jeanette's residence without incident. A family acquaintance was already there, and he later confirmed to detectives that he had offered Nikki a lift from the mother-in-law's house back to the home she shared with her husband on Alinda Road. He dropped her off at the front porch, and before driving away, noticed the interior lights of the house were on. Through the window, he could make out the figure of Tyler McCain. Cell data confirmed that at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Nikki's phone connected to a tower located in close proximity to her home. She had arrived. Her husband was inside. Then, 60 seconds later, her phone went dark. The signal dropped and never returned. That device, which had been her last communication lifeline, was never switched on again. That silence did not register as alarming at first, but as the hours of May 18th turned into a full day without word, the quiet began to press in. Chloe reached out to check on Brian's recovery and received nothing in return. By midday, there was a small, everyday reason to make contact again. Chloe needed to retrieve a sports jersey belonging to her niece and thought it might have ended up at Jeanette's address. She sent her fiancé to check. Nikki wasn't there. Jeanette hadn't laid eyes on her daughter-in-law since the middle-of-the-night vehicle handoff. The family's concern, at this stage still quiet and managed, began to grow. What made it sharpen into genuine alarm wasn't simply Nikki's silence. It was Tyler's. The sisters had years of familiarity with how Tyler behaved during marital conflict. When he and Nikki fought in the past, he became emotionally voluble. Messages would flood in, desperate declarations of love, requests for the sisters to intercede, admissions of fault. That was the established pattern. This time, none of that came. Instead, Tyler was sending a different kind of message altogether. Short, controlled, carefully worded inquiries. Have you seen her? Do you know where she is? He wasn't pleading for her return. He was mapping what the family knew and didn't know, constructing the outline of a defense before anyone had even thought to suspect him. By May 22nd, 4 full days into the silence, Nikki's sisters arrived at a conclusion they could no longer avoid. Something was badly, irreparably wrong. Chloe walked into the Reading Police Department and filed an official missing person report. Detectives moved immediately to question Tyler McCain, the last verified person to have been in contact with Nikki before she vanished. His account was straightforward enough in its surface details. He acknowledged that Nikki had come home that morning. He said the two of them had argued. And then, he told investigators, Nikki had simply left, on foot, in the middle of the night, of her own free will. Destination unknown. To law enforcement, it was a starting point. To Nikki's family, it was an insult. Everyone who knew her said the same thing. Nikki Cheng Saelee-McCain was, above everything else, a mother, leaving her children behind in the home of the very man she'd just fought with, without her car, without her phone, without calling a single person she trusted. It was inconceivable. It ran against the core of who she was. To understand why that story felt so hollow, you have to understand the life Nikki had spent years fighting to hold together. Her story didn't begin on a lonely highway or in a courthouse. It began on the gaming floor of the Wind River Resort and Casino in Reading. Nikki had been born in Thailand and built her adult life in the United States, relocating from Washington State to California, where she took a job waitressing in the casino's main area. Those who worked alongside her during that time describe a woman who filled whatever room she occupied. She was loud and slot technician, reserved, soft-spoken. Slot technician, reserved, soft-spoken, constitutionally different from the force of nature he would eventually marry. For a while, the contrast between them appeared to be a strength. They married in 2010 and put down roots in a community whose name seemed to promise everything they were working toward. Happy Valley. Over the years that followed, Nikki and Tyler became parents to 4 children. Motherhood redefined Nikki entirely. She left the workforce to devote herself to her family while Tyler managed a local spa. For nearly a decade, that structure held. Then 2020 arrived and began dismantling it. The pandemic eliminated Tyler's position, and with the job gone, something else changed, something harder to name and harder to fix. Tyler retreated into the garage. He withdrew from family life. Nikki began. To suspect his absence wasn't merely about grief or stress. She suspected substances were involved. The man who returned to the house each evening bore diminishing resemblance to the one she had chosen to build a life with. What arrived instead was someone volatile and dangerous. From 2020 through 2023, the McCain household became a place where raised voices were a regular occurrence, audible from the sidewalk. Neighbors watched as Nikki ran out of the house one evening without shoes, clearly disoriented, shouting for help, visible marks on her face and arms. By 2020, state child welfare agencies had seen enough. After reviewing the volume of police responses and the deepening instability of the environment, they made the determination that the home was unsafe for minors. All 4 of Nikki's children were removed and placed in protective custody. Even that should have ended it. It did not. Nikki went back. She always went back, caught in the exhausting, heartbreaking cycle that so many survivors of domestic violence describe. The belief that love and persistence might change what force and fear could not. She declined to file reports. She believed she could manage the situation herself. What she could not see clearly enough was that with every return, Tyler's confidence in his own impunity deepened. The incident that would eventually anchor the criminal case against him came on the night of November 29, 2023, 6 months nearly to the day before Nikki disappeared. What happened that night was methodical in a way that distinguished it from the violence of an argument. Tyler entered the house. Without a word, he walked to the back door and locked it. He was cutting off her exits before she knew she needed one. He forced Nikki onto the bed. He wound duct tape around her wrists and ankles and pressed it across her mouth. For 3 hours, he tormented her, striking her, dragging her by the hair, pouring water over her from a vase on the nightstand. Some point, he flipped her face down and wrapped what she later described as a cord around her throat and pulled. He told her he was going to end her life. After 3 hours, he left the room. Nikki seized the moment. She tore free from the tape, grabbed her keys, and ran for her car. Tyler came out of the house as she started the engine and threw himself onto the hood. She did not stop. She accelerated and sent him sliding off the front of the vehicle, then kept driving. She did not stop until she reached her mother's home, where her sisters came to her. They later said they barely recognized her face. Both eyes swollen completely shut, bruising distorting her features beyond recognition. For the first time, Nikki told police that her husband had tried to kill her. The legal response was swift. Based on her statement and her medical records, Saelee-McCain was arrested and charged with 4 separate offenses: domestic battery, criminal restraint, criminal threats, and aggravated assault. But the system stumbled at the moment it mattered most. At the bail hearing, Tyler posted bond and walked back out into the world, free to move through it while awaiting trial. His final hearing was scheduled for June 3, 2024, and everything, the entire prosecution's case, rested on one thing: Nikki taking the stand. Her testimony would be decisive. The photographic evidence of her injuries was damning. The documented account of a 3-hour orchestrated assault left no comfortable alternative interpretation. Saelee-McCain, if Nikki appeared in court, was going to prison. He knew it. And then Nikki vanished on May 18th, exactly 14 days before she was scheduled to face him in court. Under the Sixth Amendment, a defendant is constitutionally entitled to confront their accuser directly. Without Nikki's presence, her prior statements could not be introduced as primary evidence. The prosecution found itself with a case built around a witness who no longer existed. By July 2024, the district attorney had no choice. All charges from the November assault were dismissed. Saelee-McCain walked out of court with an empty record. A strategy of elimination, if that was indeed what it was, had achieved its objective completely. He remained free for nearly a year. Then, on April 1st, 2025, a highway patrol unit spotted a car drifting erratically along Highway 299 and initiated a traffic stop. Saelee-McCain was behind the wheel. A license check revealed his driving privileges had been revoked, giving officers lawful grounds to search his person. What they found in the back pocket of his jeans, tucked inside his wallet among his own cards, was a driver's license that did not belong to him. It was Nikki Cheng Saelee-McCain's identification, but what made the discovery something beyond merely strange was the state of the card. It had been exposed to fire. The plastic was warped. The lamination had bubbled and turned dark at the edges. Someone had attempted to destroy it and had not quite finished. People who believe their loved one might return do not keep their documents hidden in their wallet, and they do not try to burn them. That one scorched piece of plastic unraveled the narrative Tyler had been presenting since May. It was not the behavior of a confused husband whose wife had walked away from a fight. It was the behavior of someone who had been attempting to erase her from existence and who had failed to complete the erasure. By spring of 2025, investigators already had DNA results confirming that the blood saturating the sheet inside the Chevrolet Avalanche was Nikki's. But blood evidence in a shared family vehicle, on its own, left too much room for reasonable doubt. Defense attorneys could easily argue an innocent origin, a household accident, an undisclosed medical episode, anything. Prosecutors needed something that established not just presence, but intent. That connection came through a confidential informant. Someone within Tyler's social orbit had agreed to speak with investigators across multiple sessions. What they reported was specific and damning. Tyler had admitted to them what he had done. And according to the informant's account, this was not a rage-driven impulse or an argument that had spiraled beyond control. Tyler had acted deliberately with a singular, calculated purpose: to prevent Nikki from walking into that courtroom on June 3rd and destroying his freedom with her testimony. By August 2025, the evidentiary foundation was complete. The burned identification established an attempt to eliminate evidence. The DNA-confirmed blood established the location and scale of violence. The informant's account established motive and admission. The district attorney concluded the case was ready. A judge reviewed the application and signed an arrest warrant. No bail was authorized. On the morning that warrant was executed, around 10:15, detectives arrived at Tyler's location. He did not resist. He was transported to the same courthouse from which he had walked free 13 months earlier and formally booked into the Shasta County Jail. The charges announced at the subsequent press conference represented the full weight of what the law could bring. The primary count was first-degree murder, but prosecutors had gone further, attaching a special circumstances designation, a legal classification reserved for killings carried out with specific aggravating intent. The allegation was explicit. The act had been committed to silence a witness. That designation, if proven, eliminates the possibility of plea negotiations or reduced sentencing. It places the case in the highest category the state recognizes. The bitter calculus of what Tyler had attempted extended even further. By committing murder to escape the consequences of his prior abuse, he had handed prosecutors the motive they needed to restore everything he had made disappear. The entire suite of charges from December 2023, domestic battery, criminal restraint, unlawful possession of a firearm, aggravated assault, was reinstated alongside the new murder charge. The very crimes he had murdered to suppress were now resurrected as proof of why he murdered. He was held without bail. The man who had once walked free by eliminating his witness sat in a cell with no exit available to him this time. For Nikki's family, the arrest did not bring comfort in the way one might expect. What it brought was clarity. And the clarity was devastating. Once detectives confirmed the motive, the portrait Tyler had maintained of himself as a grieving, disoriented, overwhelmed father simply disintegrated. Kay and Chloe, who had spent months fighting for their sister's case to be taken seriously, issued public statements that did not reach for euphemism. Their message was precise. This was not an explosion of uncontrolled emotion. This was a decision made in cold deliberation. In Kay's words, what Tyler's actions revealed was a ranking of values, and in that ranking, the life of the woman he had shared a home with for 14 years was worth less than the prison sentence he was facing for what he had done to her. He chose to do the unthinkable because he believed an absent body made him safe from consequences. That calculation obliterated not one life, but an entire family's foundation. The 4 children Nikki and Tyler had raised together were, in the most painful, functional sense, orphaned, their mother gone, their father awaiting trial for taking her. The loss that Tyler had tried to engineer as a survival strategy had instead produced a catastrophe that consumed everything, including the children he might have claimed to be protecting. Nikki's relatives are left in the position of sitting across from those children and trying to find words for what happened, trying to explain, in terms that a child can absorb without breaking, why their mother will never come home. Tyler gained nothing. He lost everything and took others down with him. As of this writing, Tyler Scott McCain remains in custody and has not been brought to trial. The legal machinery is moving. The evidence is assembled. The charges are filed. But one fact remains unresolved, and it casts a shadow over everything else. Nikki Cheng Saelee-McCain's body has not been found. Under American law, a conviction for murder does not require the discovery of remains. A sufficiently robust collection of physical evidence, digital records, witness testimony, and established motive can support a finding of guilt beyond reasonable doubt. But the defense will make the absence of a body the centerpiece of its argument. Without confirmed cause of death, they will tell the jury, the prosecution's entire framework rests on inference, and inference alone is not enough to take a man's freedom. Investigators have not stopped looking, but the geography working against them is formidable. The wilderness that surrounds the Highway 36 corridor where Nikki's truck was found, stretches across hundreds of square miles of dense forest and unnavigable terrain. This is a landscape that swallows things completely and does not return them. The ravines run deep, the brush grows back fast, months of weather have passed, and the one person who holds the coordinates of what happened, who knows exactly where Nikki's final moments occurred and where she was left afterward, is in solitary confinement, choosing silence, holding on to the hope that uncertainty might still save him. For the sisters and the children and every person who loved Nikki, the case will not reach its true end with a verdict. Justice matters. Accountability matters. But what they need, what families in this position always need and so rarely receive, is the ability to bring her home, to lay her to rest, to mark a place on the earth and say, she was here, and she was loved, and she is remembered. The investigation remains open in that regard. If you saw a beige Chevrolet Avalanche moving through the Begum Canyon area or along Highway 36 in the weeks surrounding May 2024, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office is asking you to come forward. The dead zone kept its silence for too long. It is past time for it to speak. Thank you for watching till the end and supporting this channel. Your likes, comments, and shares really help the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment to share your thoughts. Always stay aware of your surroundings and trust your instincts. Small precautions can make a big difference in keeping you safe. Thank you again, stay alert, and I'll see you in the next video.